We are going to get started with lesson 4.2, and our main focus is going to be on operant conditioning and the impact that it has on our daily lives. And I think you're going to really see how throughout your day, operant conditioning principles are at work. So, our purpose for today is to be able to predict the effects of operant conditioning. So, does this increase behavior? Does this decrease behavior? And then looking at various aspects of reinforcement and looking at how they influence the quality of learning. How long will the behavior stick around? Is the behavior really increasing, decreasing, etc.? So, first, what we're looking at is what exactly is operant conditioning. So, operant conditioning is a type of associative learning so that an action is going to lead to a consequence. And these are largely voluntary behaviors. So, if I were to think about a cat running to me when I open the bag, okay, they're running to me. That is a voluntary action. And then I give them the reward of food. Okay. If a cat is purring, okay, that is going to be more of an involuntary response, okay, like in classical conditioning. Okay, so with operant conditioning, the participant is an active participant, it's not passive learning, and with operant, it's a voluntary behavior. The person here that is pictured is named Edward Thorndike. And he really laid the foundation for operant conditioning with his law of effect. And what he found is that rewarded behavior is likely to recur. And he created the puzzle box. So I'm going to show you a video here of a reenactment of Thorndike's puzzle box. And essentially, what he did is he created a box and put cats in there to see if they would try to get out to get food. So here we go.
How is a new skill learned? That was a question which began to fascinate Thorndike. To answer it, he built some ingenious puzzle boxes from which cats could only escape by operating latches.
And in you go.
The cat appears to be very clever in engineering its escape, solving the problem with a deftly placed paw and a push of its nose. But Thorndike didn't believe that an animal, even a clever cat, understands the consequences of its behavior. When he placed a cat in the puzzle box for the first time, Thorndike was unable to see any evidence of flashes of insight. The successful actions appeared first by chance. He proved that the apparent cleverness arose by trial and error, and used graphs to measure the rate of learning. A well-practiced cat quickly recalls the actions that help it escape to its reward of food. If an action brings a reward, Thorndike believed that that action becomes stamped into the mind. In his thesis, he explained further his ideas about learning, that behavior changes because of its consequences. He called this his law of effect, which explained how even wild creatures develop new habits.
Okay, so, and just as a side note, you may hear my special helper, my 10-month-old, in the background. Okay, so now we are going to move on to a pioneer in psychology, B.F. Skinner. And this is a name that you absolutely must know for this course. This is probably top 5 psychologists that you would have to know. So, B.F. Skinner is a pioneer psychologist for behaviorism, specifically for operant conditioning. So, star it, highlight it, do whatever you need to do in order to make sure that you remember B.F. Skinner. So, what Skinner did is he created an operant chamber, which is often called a Skinner box. Okay, and what happens is a rat is going to press a bar for food. So here I have a picture of it. So a rat presses the bar, and then a food pellet is going to come out of this dispenser. And then it was hooked up to a way to measure the number of responses, the rate of responses, same as number, the amount of time that elapsed. So able to measure how the positive reinforcement was helping or was increasing the rat's behavior of pressing the lever. So I have something similar here with a pigeon.
Can pigeons read? This one gives every indication, because he's been taught to distinguish between two words and to behave appropriately. He's learned his different response to each sign by being rewarded with food. So the bird isn't acting independently. Its behavior is shaped by controlling its environment. The first task was to isolate an individual piece of behavior and see how that could be changed. Skinner did this by keeping individual pigeons at about 3/4 of their normal weight, so that the birds were always hungry, and food could be used as an automatic reward. The pigeon was studied in a uniform box, one it quickly grew used to. One piece of behavior, pecking a coloured disc, was measured on a graph. The pigeon learned that pecking the disc produced a reward. Then the behavior of pecking could be studied in relation to how often that reward was offered, or in Skinner's terms, what was the schedule of reinforcement.
The main thing is what we call schedules of reinforcement. Reinforcement is what the layman calls reward, and you can schedule it so that a reward occurs every now and then when a pigeon does something. We usually use a response with a pigeon pecking a little disc, a little spot on the wall, and you can reinforce with food. But you don't reinforce every time. You're perhaps every 10th time, or perhaps only once every minute, or something like that. There are a very large number of schedules, and they have their special effects. And there is a good example of how you can move from the pigeon to the human case, because...
Okay, so we'll move on from there and come back to the schedules of reinforcement. But what you could see there is how when the pigeon pecked on the disc, you could see that how it was graphed. But the pigeon pecking at the disc is a active behavior, okay, and then is being reinforced with the food. So the next part we're going to look at with Skinner's early experiments is shaping. Okay, and what shaping is reinforcing smaller behaviors that get closer to a target behavior. And I think the best way to to explain this is to show you.
And we're going to try another pigeon now, and I will try to pick out some particular pattern of behavior and make it a more frequent part of the repertoire of the bird. Very fine. This bird has been already conditioned to eat when the magazine sounds and the light flashes. Now we'll just watch its behavior a bit. It's not doing anything in particular, you see, but I'm going to try to get it to do something. Suppose I shape up the behavior of making a complete turn. What I do is simply, as I did then, to wait for some part of that behavior. There's more of it, you see. You can see that the effect is instantaneous. I'm waiting for it to turn counterclockwise now. And then I reinforce that movement. And I wait for a more pronounced movement than that. It's got to be more than that. There we go, all the way around.
Okay, so here what happened is that the pigeon had to turn, let's say, make a quarter turn and then got reinforced. Then the next time had to make a half turn to get reinforced until eventually it was going all the way around. So here I'd like you to write down the example of pigeon going in the circle. And then also you can think of the hot cold game. And normally what I would do is I would play the hot cold game in class. Where you want them to get to the desired behavior of finding the object. So you tell them hot, that's a reinforcement, and you tell them cold, which would be a punishment, but you're getting them closer to that desired behavior. So now with the training procedures, we're going to move on here, and this is Skinner's work as well, and this is where we're going to spend the bulk of our time. Okay, so a few things that we need to know with the training procedures is we have to be able to isolate the behavior, and then we have to be able to isolate the stimulus. So with the behavior, anytime you see the word reinforcement, that means that the behavior is going to increase. Anytime you see the word punishment, that means the behavior will decrease. Okay, and once we've identified the behavior, then we can look at the stimulus. Okay, and the stimulus, if it says positive, we're going to add the stimulus. If it says negative, we're going to remove the stimulus. So you can't think of positive as good, negative as bad. You need to think of it more like math, adding and subtracting. So what I would like you to do right now is I would like you to copy down 1, 2, and then this chart. Don't do anything just yet here. I guess I suppose you could just copy everything down. Hit pause, copy this down, and then we're going to go over what all of this means. So what we're going to do is I have our diagram on the left here, and then I have 4 examples on the right. And what you're going to do is first we need to underline the behavior, and we have to think about what is the organism, what is the participant actively doing. Okay, so if I look at number 1, okay, a girl gets dessert for eating her veggies. Okay, her behavior is eating her veggies. Okay, she is actively eating her veggies. So then we have to identify the stimulus, and it's often just one word. Okay, and in this case, dessert is the stimulus. Okay, the stimulus, now we have to look at our chart here, and we're always going to start here. Is dessert desired or undesired? Okay, and in this case, it will be desired. Are we adding the dessert or are we removing the dessert? And this is really a separate question here. I'm not looking at is adding dessert desired, okay? I'm looking at are we adding or removing the dessert? And in this case, we're adding, so that makes it positive reinforcement. If you add something that you want, okay, that's going to increase behavior. You work for money, okay? That's adding something that you want. So you're more likely to work because you're going to get money. Okay, let's move on to number 2 then. Okay, so a child is yelled at for hitting his sister. Okay, the behavior here, if we underline the behavior, what is the organism actively doing? Hitting his sister. Okay, and then what is the stimulus? Yell. Okay, he's getting yelled at. Okay, so now we have to look at is yelling desired or undesired? Okay, and I don't want you guys to overthink this and be like, well, maybe some people like to get yelled at. No, we're just going to look at, okay, that typically is going to be undesired, and then we're adding it. Okay, so here, that would be positive punishment. So the goal here is to add the yelling to decrease the behavior of hitting. Okay, and then moving on. Okay, we have the next one here. What the person is doing is texting in class. Okay, so the person is texting in class. That's the behavior. So then the stimulus is going to be the phone. Okay, so texting in class and the phone, and this is going to be negative punishment. Okay, you take the phone away, okay, in hopes to decrease texting in class. Now this last one here, you press a button to turn off your alarm. Okay, so what is the organism actively doing? Pressing a button. Okay, so they're actively pressing a button. And here the stimulus then is the alarm. Okay, so the stimulus is the alarm. And if we look here, is the alarm desired or undesired? Well, the alarm is undesired. Are we adding or removing it? We are removing it, so that makes it negative reinforcement. Okay, that makes it negative reinforcement. So what I would like you to do at this time, okay, is I would like you to go and complete parts 1 and 2 on your FAST assignment, and then make sure you check the information on the key. Okay, so again, go ahead and complete parts 1 and 2. The first one is really straightforward, where it's like asking, is it desired, undesired, etc. And then part 2 is just looking at the negatives. Okay, and if I go, and what I'll do is I'll make sure to be really clear in the first part with the positive versus negative. But if you have any questions or any confusions, please send me an email so I can review it during our next class on Monday or Tuesday.